Why hello, my name is Quinn and I have autism, a fact that nobody knew. That was funny to me and me alone, but I'm keeping that in. I have been asked to make some videos about autism and I have no problem doing that. This video will be about the signs when I was growing up that I was autistic. There were some pretty distinct signs of me being autistic when I was younger, like a lot more distinct than the signs that I was trans, like that video that I made a little bit ago. And that's because autism has like a set list of traits. You don't have to have all the traits to have autism, it's just it does have a list of things, which is funny because a lot of autistic people like lists. It's me. I like lists. There is one moment that I feel like sums up the entirety of my childhood, which was when I was a toddler. I had like a birthday party that was held in like a gymnasium. You know, it was like a good way to save money but still have a party. I was like 3, so I don't really remember much of what happened. Anyway, there was a lot of people who are running around in this gym that I remember, and it was loud and there was a lot of echoing and the lights were bright, and apparently I just disappeared. Like my mother had to come find me and I was in a dark room somewhere else in the building. I don't know if this was like a church or a school, but yeah, I was like hiding somewhere in the dark, alone, where it was quiet. I was eventually dragged back out to go interact with people, and I don't think I was having a good time. And this was a very known fact throughout my family and anyone close to us, or like teachers, that I was just a shy person. Like I hardly ever liked to talk. I would hide behind my parents' legs whenever I met someone new. Meeting new people was the worst. Like I could be interactive with people once I started to understand who they were, but up front, no. Too scary. It was also well known that I did better one-on-one with people rather than a big group, but also I liked just doing things on my own. I think I said this very frequently to my parents, who were concerned that I didn't really have any friends. If I did manage to make a friend, it would be someone who had just come to the school. It even went into an acrostic poem that I made in like 3rd or 4th grade, where I was like acknowledging the fact that I tended to only be friends with people who were the new students because they wouldn't know anyone. And I didn't have any friends, so I'd be the first to reach out to them to see if, you know, we could make a connection. Most of the time we did, because I was the first person to reach out to them, you know? But then inevitably within like a week or 2, they suddenly want nothing to do with me, and sometimes they would very quickly start to bully me. I had a lot of bullies in the past. I couldn't even like name them all. I do remember one distinctly. There was someone who came from another country, and I was very quick to get very close with her, but then within 2 weeks, for whatever reason, she turned the entire class and other people from the grade that were not in the class against me. Like just one day we were out at recess and suddenly I had like a whole bunch of people just chasing me around. It's like they were playing a game of tag, but there was only one person to catch and everyone else was it, and I didn't even know we were playing at first. Honestly, that probably would have been pretty terrifying, but it's funny now. And I never understood why I was kind of just pushed aside by everyone else I knew. I was aware I was different, but I didn't realize that these differences were the reason why I wasn't getting any friends or keeping any friends. Although, in hindsight, it was just because I was weird. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I use the word weird as kind of like a neutral or even positive term. Like I had weird hobbies, weird traits, and weird forms of art that I like to make. Once again, it wasn't that there was anything wrong with my weirdness, it was that no one else shared that weirdness. I moved schools like every year, starting from like 3rd, 4th grade, and between that time I had been to 3 different gifted programs. Like they're just a different track within a public school for the neurodivergent kids. I got along a lot better with the students in those programs because they were also neurodivergent in some way, shape, or form. But even though I made some decently close friends while I was in each of those programs, I never stayed in touch. Even if I tried to, it wouldn't work out. It wasn't until high school that I actually made like a lasting connection with people. Funny enough, we were all neurodivergent. There was even a year that I was pulled from public school to be homeschooled for health reasons, which was a very interesting experience, and that's all I'm gonna say about that. In terms of like actual traits that were presenting themselves that are a little bit less abstract. I had a lot of repetitive behaviors that I now recognize were stimming. I think the earliest one that I can think of is like twirling at hair. I still do that actually, but it's more developed into like trichotillomania, which is when you pull out your hair. I had other like self-injurious kind of behavior, like not only pulling out the hair but also picking at my skin or like rubbing at my skin or biting at my skin. I also like pressing my hands into like sharp things. Although I didn't have the intent on trying to injure myself, that's just kind of what I did. I think I was like sensory seeking in that sense. I also really liked water, and that was like a huge like sensory yes for me. I also had a lot of sensory no-nos. A huge issue for me was clothing. Like I could not stand jeans. You would not catch me in a pair of jeans. I wore like the same leggings like over and over again, like they were the same kind of leggings, just like different colors. I hated socks, like the toe seams. I couldn't stand those. By high school, I figured out that if I flipped the socks inside out, it bothered me less. Oh, and shoes. I didn't get new shoes very often, but when I did, I would make matters awful for everyone involved. So just generally, I had a hard time understanding what was appropriate in social situations in certain settings. Like I'd clear my throat in the middle of class and my teachers would be like, "Excuse you, I'm getting to you in a minute." And I'd just stare at them like, I don't know why you have to be sassy about it. I was just having to cough. On the same note, my jokes often didn't land because my tone was always not what people were expecting from someone telling a joke. Like I would try to say something funny, but it would come across as mean because I wasn't very good at like making my tone obvious what I meant. And also I guess a lot of what I thought was funny was not funny to most other people. Like I remember someone was being really annoying and just telling everyone to be quiet, so I just kind of looked at her and went, "Why don't you be quiet?" And then I got in trouble for that later. Because she thought it was mean. It was supposed to be a joke. There was always a lot of notes from my teachers that I didn't work well in groups. There was also a really specific note that I needed a lot of reminding to move from one activity to the next. Like I had trouble with transitions. Only I find that funny. I got really bothered when plans were changed, not because I remember having a distinct schedule or routine, but I didn't like it when I had an expectation of something happening that day and then it didn't happen. Although to be fair, I feel like it's just generally disappointing if you make plans and then they don't work out that way. Definitely had echolalia and echopraxia, like echophenomena. I copied a lot of what I heard and saw that I thought was interesting, or I don't even know the reason why. It's just my brain would tell me that I have to repeat things that I saw or heard. Really embarrassing a lot of the time. No eye contact whatsoever. I was anxious and stressed all the time, much more than a child should be. I had difficulty with eating because I didn't like the textures of certain things. In particular, I really didn't like meat, and I couldn't bite into any fruits. Like hand me an apple, I couldn't bite into it, it had to be cut. And I wouldn't eat any of like the white parts of orange slices. Family members would often get angry at me for not finishing everything on my plate, or like kind of leaving behind like certain bits of food that I just couldn't get to. Like certain bits of meat that just didn't like the texture of, or like those white bits of orange. My creativity was also quite strange because I was creating a lot of art, but I wasn't doing it for anyone else. It was for me, which is a good thing if you think about it. But people found it weird that I wasn't adhering to certain standards. Like I remember in like kindergarten, I would be tasked with drawing a butterfly and I wanted to have asymmetrical wings. And every single time that I'd bring my new butterfly to the teacher, she'd say, "You have to make it symmetrical," and I didn't understand why I couldn't make an asymmetrical butterfly. I was so sensitive to noise and to light, as demonstrated by that first story that I told. That's just something that continued very strongly to this day. I'm still very sensitive to noise and light. I got overwhelmed quite easily, and when I did, it would be quite explosive. At a Lego robotics league, I feel like that might have been a sign all on its own. But I had made like an attachment for the robot to perform a certain task, and even though it had worked every single time in practice, it wasn't working at the meet. And then at the end of the competition, I had a very public meltdown. I was screaming and crying and thrashing on the ground, and no one could calm me down. It was bad. And then I was brought to a social worker who said I had anxiety, which isn't incorrect. It's just I don't think that that's what that was. I also had a burning hatred for small talk. To be honest, I think I still do. But I remember distinctly I would be asked like, oh, how was your day when I got home? And I would just be annoyed at that. It would take so much out of me to actually say something. Apparently, I seemed so miserable to have to go to school every day. I had such bad social anxiety about trying to go to school. But then once I was there, it was fine. I would also have really aggressive meltdowns after school when I was younger, where I became so agitated that I had to be separated from my siblings. I find my special interests tend to be quite broad. Like, I've always had an interest in storytelling, whether that be through movies, TV shows, or me telling the story, or books, or writing something down, creating characters. I don't know. I spent a lot of time trying to relate everything in my life to stories. Even though I didn't start writing until middle school age, I just would map things out in my head as having connections because it was all a part of a story, if that made sense. And in order to better connect with things, I would write stories and add characters, add elements to things just to make them more interesting to me so that I could get a better grasp of it.
It's also probably worth noting that I very much related to all the robot characters and everything that I watched or read. Also thought I was a robot for a while and was very easily interested in things that were not as socially acceptable. Like, I was really interested in owl pellets.
Despite having a very active imagination, I also took things way too literally. Didn't get sarcasm, didn't understand most social cues, and rolling the eyes as being like a rude gesture. I didn't quite understand what that meant. I assumed it'd be like a cartoonish, like exaggerated gesture, but when I found out that it was only kind of like a weird, it was just very subtle, it suddenly made sense to me why I kept getting in trouble for rolling my eyes when that wasn't what I was doing. I also remember not getting along well with people that were my age. I could get along with people who were younger than me and people who were older than me, but anyone in my grade, I just didn't, or at least not in general. Like, socially, I was quite delayed. Like, this is just a known fact. Like, I didn't understand people. But on the other hand, I was also that kid that was so mature, and that's because in other senses I had to grow up too fast. I got along well with people who were older than me because I was always looking for more like intellectual talks or like philosophical discussions. So I guess the best way to explain it is like I matured quickly in the cognitive sense, but then I was very delayed in developing in the interacting with people sense. And the reason that autism was never clocked for me was probably because I did so well in school. I mean, I didn't have a social life, so what else am I gonna do with my time except for homework? And I was a quiet kid, someone who didn't cause trouble, so they never really looked into there maybe being something different about me in the brain sense. Like, they knew I was different. They just didn't know that it was something that I might need help with. I would have liked to know that I was autistic a lot earlier, because then I would have been kinder to myself about the fact that I wasn't easily able to make connections with people. I didn't have the same communication style as most of the people that I was interacting with, and I just didn't understand how they were communicating with me. So I just felt off a lot of the time. And because there wasn't a word for what was going on with my brain, I just thought it was my fault and that I was doing something wrong to have this effect. But there isn't anything inherently wrong with the way that autistic people communicate. It's just different from most other people, which is why it's considered abnormal when it's not. I don't feel like I need to explain myself. There's nothing wrong with being autistic, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have challenges, okay? There are plenty of challenges that comes with being autistic. I'm sure there are plenty of other signs from when I was a kid that pointed towards me having autism, but I can't think of any of them right now, so goodbye.